My name is Rebecca Winters. I'm 34 years old, and exactly 47 minutes after my grandmother's funeral ended, my brother Derek sent me a text message that would eventually send him to prison for a decade. Found Grandma's real will in her safe. The message read at precisely 4:23 p.m. on that gray October afternoon. Looks like she changed her mind about everything. I'll handle the estate stuff. Don't worry about it. I stared at my phone screen in the funeral home parking lot, rain pelting against my windshield, and something cold settled in my stomach. Grandma Eleanor had updated her will just 3 months before her death. I knew this because I'd driven her to the attorney's office myself, sat in the waiting room for 90 minutes while she finalized everything. Derek thinks I'm senile, she told me that day, her papery hand gripping mine. He's been dropping hints about memory care facilities. But Rebecca, my mind is perfectly clear. I see exactly who he's become. Those words echoed now as I watched Derek through the funeral home window, working the room like a politician. Shaking hands, accepting condolences with practiced solemnity, his expensive suit perfectly tailored. Before I explain what happened next, let me know where you're viewing from in the comments and hit subscribe if you've ever dealt with a family member who thought they could rewrite reality to suit their needs. To really understand why that text message felt like a knife sliding between my ribs, you'd have to go back 7 years. Back to when Derek first started positioning himself as Grandma's primary caregiver. Our grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, had built a small empire from nothing. Starting with a single laundromat in 1968, she'd expanded into commercial real estate across 3 states. By the time she turned 80, her portfolio was worth approximately $8.2 million. Derek had always been the golden child in our family. Charismatic, smooth-talking, able to convince anyone of anything. Our parents had always excused his behavior. When he dropped out of college after 2 semesters, they called it brave. When he cycled through 7 jobs in 5 years, they said he was entrepreneurial. When he showed up at family gatherings driving cars he couldn't afford, they called him ambitious. I took a different path. Finished my accounting degree, worked for a regional firm, built a stable life. Practical, reliable, boring. That's how Derek described me at Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago. Rebecca's got the excitement level of a tax return, he'd laughed, and everyone joined in. The shift began when Grandma Eleanor fell and fractured her hip in early 2016. She was 80 years old, fiercely independent, and the injury terrified her. Derek swooped in immediately, suddenly devoted and attentive. He started visiting her twice a week, calling daily, inserting himself into every medical decision. Your brother has really stepped up, Grandma told me during one visit. But there was something in her tone I couldn't quite read. Within 6 months, Derek had moved into Grandma's guest house. Just temporarily, he claimed, to help her recover. The temporary arrangement lasted 7 years. He paid no rent, contributed nothing to utilities or groceries. His explanation was always the same. I'm providing care. That's worth more than money. My best friend Marcus saw through it immediately. He's positioning himself. Marcus told me over coffee one Saturday. Your brother is playing the long game, Rebecca. He's making sure everyone sees him as the devoted grandson, so when the time comes, he looks like the obvious choice. That's cynical, I'd replied, though the observation made my stomach twist uncomfortably. When's the last time Derek actually worked? What's he living on? I didn't have an answer. Derek claimed to be consulting for startups, but I'd never seen evidence of actual employment. Yet he continued driving expensive cars, wearing designer clothes, taking weekend trips to Vegas and Miami. Grandma's helping me get my business off the ground, he'd explained vaguely. She believes in my vision. That business never materialized. Neither did the next 3 ventures he described over the following years. The build-up to that devastating text message was a series of small betrayals that I documented without fully understanding why. Looking back now, I realized some instinct was screaming at me to keep records. In January 2020, Grandma mentioned casually that she'd given Derek $50,000 to invest in a restaurant concept. He's finally found his calling, she said. The restaurant never opened. When I asked Derek about it months later, he waved dismissively. The partnership fell through. These things happen in business. In June 2021, I discovered that Derek had been named on several of Grandma's bank accounts as a joint holder. For emergencies, he explained. so I can help her if she needs something urgently and you're not available with your busy schedule. I'm available, I said carefully. I've always been available for Grandma. Right, Derek smirked. Which is why you couldn't drive her to her cardiology appointment last month? I'd been in a mandatory work training 3 hours away. Derek knew this, but the implication hung there that I was neglecting Grandma while he sacrificed everything. Our mother jumped in immediately. Derek has really been wonderful, Rebecca. We're so grateful he's able to be there for her daily. In December 2022, Grandma's longtime attorney, Robert Chun, called me. Rebecca, your grandmother came in last week to discuss her estate planning. She seemed concerned about some things. She asked a lot of questions about undue influence and how to structure a will that couldn't be easily contested. What kind of questions? I asked, my heart rate accelerating. I can't get into specifics, but I got the impression she wanted to make sure certain assets went to specific people and that she was worried about interference after her death. She asked about video testimonials, about documenting her mental competency. Did Derek know about this meeting? A pause. He drove her to my office, but he didn't come in for the meeting itself. That conversation planted a seed of dread that grew steadily. I started paying closer attention during my weekly visits with Grandma. She seemed tired more often, vaguer in her responses. Derek was always hovering, always present. I started keeping detailed notes. Every visit, I documented what Grandma said, how she seemed, what Derek was present for. I noted the dates and amounts when she mentioned giving Derek money. The restaurant, $50,000. A real estate investment, $75,000. Startup capital for a tech company, $100,000. Legal fees for a business dispute, $30,000. By my conservative estimate, Grandma had given Derek over $400,000 in 7 years. None of it had been repaid, none of the promised ventures had succeeded, and Derek's lifestyle had become increasingly lavish. A new Range Rover appeared in 2021, 3 international vacations in 2022, and a Rolex that had to cost at least $15,000. It's more than odd, Rebecca, Marcus said bluntly. It's financial exploitation. Your brother is systematically draining your grandmother's assets. The climax came faster than I expected. In August 2023, Grandma called me directly, not through Derek, which was unusual. Her voice sounded stronger, clearer than it had in months. Rebecca, I need you to come over tomorrow morning at 9. Don't tell Derek. This is important. Is everything okay? I asked. Just be here, she said firmly. And bring that legal friend of yours. Marcus right. That night, I barely slept. We arrived at precisely 9 a.m. Derek's Range Rover was gone from the driveway. We sat in her sunlit kitchen, and she told us everything. I'm not senile, she began, her eyes sharp and clear. Whatever Derek has told people, I want you both to know that my mind is perfectly sound. And I need to fix what I've allowed to happen. Over the next 2 hours, she detailed 7 years of manipulation. How Derek had convinced her that I was too busy to care about her. How he'd gradually taken control of her finances. How he'd suggested her longtime attorney was old-fashioned. I gave him money because he made me feel guilty, Grandma said, her voice breaking. He'd talk about how he'd sacrificed his career to care for me. But Rebecca, none of those businesses were real. He was just taking money and spending it on himself. How much total? Marcus asked gently. Grandma pulled out a folder from a hidden lockbox. Inside were bank statements, canceled checks, transfer records. Over $680,000 in the past 7 years. And that's just what I can document. The number hit me like a physical blow. Nearly $750,000 gone. I want to update my will, Grandma continued. I want to make things right before I die. And I want to do it properly, with witnesses, with documentation that can't be challenged. That meeting led to the appointment with Mr. Chin 3 weeks later. In the attorney's office, Grandma did something brilliant. She insisted on a video recording of the entire will signing process. I want there to be no doubt about my mental state, she told Mr. Chin. Record me explaining my wishes, demonstrating that I understand exactly what I'm doing. The video lasted 47 minutes. In it, Grandma methodically explained her decisions. The bulk of her estate, approximately $7.4 million after Derek's spending, would go to me. Derek would receive $50,000, the same amount she'd given him for his first failed restaurant. I'm leaving him this amount because he's my grandson and I loved him, Grandma said to the camera. But I cannot in good conscience leave him more. He's proven that he sees me as a resource to be exploited. Rebecca has been the one who truly cared for me. She died 6 weeks later. Massive stroke, sudden and catastrophic. She was 87 years old. The funeral was on a Tuesday in October. Derek gave a moving eulogy about sacrifice and devotion. People dabbed at their eyes. Our mother clutched his arm proudly afterward. I sat in the front pew clutching the envelope Mr. Chun had given me the day before. Don't open this until after the funeral, he'd instructed. And when you do, call me immediately. That's when Derek sent the text. I opened the envelope in my car. Inside was a USB drive and a note, video evidence of the actual will signing. 3 witnesses present. Original will in my office safe. Your brother doesn't have access to any of this, but based on your grandmother's concerns, he may try to produce a fraudulent document. The reading of the will was scheduled for the following Monday at Mr. Chen's office. Derek arrived 15 minutes early, carrying a leather folder. He brought our parents, both of them. There's been a misunderstanding, Derek began before Mr. Chen could start. I found Grandma's actual final will in her home safe. She'd updated it recently, but apparently forgot to tell anyone. He slid a document across the conference table. It looked official, proper legal formatting, signatures, witness lines filled in. According to this version, Grandma had left everything to Derek with a small $100,000 trust for me. This is dated 2 months ago, Derek said. I know this is surprising, Rebecca, but Grandma talked to me about it before she died. This is dated September 15th, I said slowly. 2 months ago. Yes, Derek confirmed. That's interesting, Mr. Chin said, opening his own folder. Because Mrs. Hayes came to this office on September 20th, 5 days after the date on your document, to review her existing will and confirm that no changes were needed. She signed an affidavit to that effect. The color drained from Derek's face. She also, Mr. Chin continued, signed a statement specifically indicating that if any will emerged claiming to be more recent than August 22nd, it should be considered fraudulent. This is ridiculous, Derek said, his voice losing confidence. That's when I spoke. The safe you mentioned, Derek. Where exactly is it? In her bedroom, he said automatically. Behind the painting of... He stopped, realizing his mistake. Interesting, I said quietly, because Grandma had that safe removed 3 months ago. The company that removed it documented everything. There's a video of them taking it out of the house. The silence was deafening. You're lying, Derek said, but his voice wavered. I have the documentation from Metro Safe Company, I replied, dated July 18th. There's been no safe in that house for 4 months. So I'm very curious about where you actually found this supposed will. Derek stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. This is bullshit. You turned her against me somehow. Sit down, Derek, Mr. Chin said sharply, or I will call security. Mrs. Hayes anticipated exactly this reaction, which is why she insisted on creating video documentation. He turned his laptop around, queuing up the video. For 47 minutes, we watched Grandma explain her decisions in excruciating detail. She discussed specific conversations with Derek, quoted things he'd said to her, detailed exactly how much money she'd given him. My grandson Derek has been systematically exploiting my affection and trust, she said to the camera. I've given him $683,400 over the past 7 years, and he's produced nothing but excuses. He's lived rent-free in my property and actively worked to isolate me from my granddaughter Rebecca, who has always been responsible and caring. The video continued. She described Derek's attempts to convince her to change attorneys, his suggestions that she sign over power of attorney to him, his frequent mentions of memory care facilities. If Derek produces any will claiming to supersede this one, Grandma said, looking directly into the camera, it will be a forgery. This is my final will. I am of sound mind, and I want my estate to go to Rebecca, who has earned it through years of genuine care. By the time the video ended, Derek was pale and shaking. Our mother's expression had shifted from confident support to confused horror. The signatures on your document, Mr. Chin said quietly, were compared to known samples of Mrs. Hayes's handwriting by a certified forensic document examiner. They're forgeries, not even particularly good ones. He slid the forensic report across the table. The witnesses listed on your document were also contacted. None of them recall signing such a document. 2 have alibis placing them elsewhere on September 15th. 1 doesn't exist. The address and phone number are fake. I want to call my lawyer, Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. That would be advisable, Mr. Chin agreed, because I'm obligated to report this attempted fraud to the proper authorities. Creating a forged will is a felony in this state. Given the value of the estate in question, over $7 million, this is a Class B felony carrying a potential sentence of 5 to 15 years in prison. Our mother gasped. You can't be serious. This is family. Mrs. Hayes specifically requested that any attempt to defraud her estate be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, Mr. Chin said. Derek stood up suddenly, and I thought he might run. But he just stood there, swaying slightly. Rebecca, he said, his voice breaking. Please, we can work this out. I panicked. You forged Grandma's will, I said, my voice surprisingly calm. You fabricated legal documents to steal millions of dollars. That wasn't panic. That was premeditated fraud. I spent 7 years taking care of her, he said desperately. I deserve something for that. You got $680,000, I replied, plus 7 years of free rent, free food, free everything. And you squandered it all. Mr. Chun cleared his throat. I need to make a phone call. I suggest everyone stay seated until the authorities arrive. That's when Derek tried to run. He made it halfway to the door before security guards blocked his exit. Sir, please remain in the building. The police are on their way. The next 72 hours were a blur of police interviews, evidence submission, and formal statements. I handed over everything. The video documentation, the forensic analysis, the records of Grandma's actual will signing. Derek was arrested at his apartment. The police found more forged documents in his possession, fake trust amendments, fake property deeds, fake power of attorney forms. He'd apparently been planning this for months. The forensic accountant discovered even more disturbing details. Derek had been slowly siphoning money from Grandma's accounts for years, $50 here, $200 there. The total came to an additional $143,000 beyond what she'd willingly given him. He'd also taken out credit cards in her name, running up $67,000 in debt. The full scope of his fraud totaled over $890,000. Almost $1 million stolen from an elderly woman who trusted him. The calls started within hours of his arrest. First from our mother, hysterical and accusatory. How could you do this to your brother? You're destroying this family over money. Then from extended family members who'd heard Derek's version, that I'd manipulated Grandma, fabricated evidence to steal his inheritance. I blocked most of the numbers. The ones I didn't block, I saved, evidence of harassment, should I need it later. Only my cousin Jennifer reached out with support. I'm glad someone finally stopped him, she said. He's been conning people for years. Grandma was just his biggest mark. The criminal trial took 8 months. Derek's lawyer tried to argue that the will forgery was a misunderstanding, that Derek genuinely believed the document was authentic. The argument fell apart when prosecutors presented his internet search history. How to forge a will, document aging techniques, signature forgery tutorial, penalty for will fraud, all searched in the weeks before Grandma's death. They also presented the other forged documents, the pattern of financial exploitation, and testimony from Grandma's neighbors who reported that Derek had been increasingly controlling in her final months, monitoring her phone calls, screening visitors, changing the locks without her knowledge. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: forgery, attempted theft, elder financial abuse, identity theft. The sentencing hearing was on a cold morning in March, exactly 10 months after Grandma's funeral. Derek stood in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller, somehow diminished. The judge reviewed the evidence methodically. The $890,000 in documented theft and fraud. The 7 years of systematic exploitation. The forged will and fake documents. The credit cards opened in Grandma's name. This represents one of the most egregious cases of elder financial abuse this court has seen, the judge said. You exploited a woman who loved and trusted you. You repaid that generosity with theft, manipulation, and ultimately attempted fraud on a massive scale. She sentenced him to 10 years in prison, the maximum allowed. With good behavior, he might serve 7. But 7 years was still 7 years, and the felony conviction meant he'd carry this forever. Our mother sobbed throughout the sentencing. Our father sat stone-faced. I felt nothing but a hollow kind of relief. It was over. That was 18 months ago. Derek is currently serving his sentence at a medium-security facility 3 hours away. Our mother visits him monthly and sends me accusatory emails that I no longer read. Our father and I maintain a polite but distant relationship. I've spent the time since untangling Grandma's estate and trying to honor her wishes properly. The properties are now managed by a professional firm. I've set up scholarships in her name, funded community programs she cared about, and preserved the laundromat business. It's now run as a nonprofit providing employment training. The $890,000 Derek stole is mostly gone, spent on cars, trips, clothes. The courts ordered restitution, but he has no assets. I'll likely never recover that money, and honestly, I've made peace with that. What I've gained is harder to quantify, but infinitely more valuable. I sleep peacefully now, knowing I honored Grandma's final wishes. I protected her legacy from someone who saw her only as a resource to exploit. Marcus, who stood by me through everything, proposed last month. We're planning a small wedding next spring, just the people who actually showed up when things got hard. The security cameras I'd installed in Grandma's house, the ones Derek didn't know about, captured everything in those final months. Hours of footage showing Derek going through her papers when she slept, practicing her signature, making phone calls where he discussed the payout once the old lady finally kicks it. That footage was devastating at trial. Looking back now, I realize Grandma knew exactly what she was doing when she called me that August morning. She'd been testing Derek, giving him chances to show genuine care, documenting everything when he failed. The safe removal, the video while signing, none of it was paranoia. It was the careful strategy of a woman who'd built an empire and refused to let a con artist destroy it. Some family members still claim I was too harsh, that I should have handled things privately. But they weren't there for the 7 years of manipulation. They didn't see the forged documents. They didn't hear Grandma's voice on that video, explaining how betrayed she felt. The real cruelty would have been letting him get away with it. Some people are simply incapable of seeing family as anything other than resources to be exploited, and Derek proved beyond any doubt that he was one of them. For the first time in years, I visit Grandma's grave without the weight of unfinished business. I handled it. I tell her headstone, just like you knew I would. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member everyone else defended? Have you had to choose between keeping the peace and doing what's right? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, hit subscribe, because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let manipulators rewrite reality. The truth has a way of emerging eventually, especially when someone's been paying attention and keeping receipts all along.